Not enough people talk about the importance of fun and satisfying gameplay loops, and to my surprise, Pokemon Legends ZA is my absolute favorite example of a strong gameplay loop in 2025. And that's saying something because this is a year where Donkey Kong Bananza came out. This is a true triumph because Pokemon games in particular have suffered for years in this department. Let's talk about how Pokemon Legends ZA turned most of those games' weaknesses into strength. The internet has always deeply misunderstood the value of Pokemon games. That's obviously true for people that spend their lives hating on Pokemon, but it's also just as true for people that love these games. And I'd argue the latter has made the road to Legends EA specifically, or rather what it has achieved, much longer than it could have been. Historically, Pokemon games have never been fun to play. I stand by that, will continue to stand by that. What I won't agree with the haters on though is that means that the games inherently lack value, because that is a fundamental misunderstanding of what value is at best, or an outright lie at worst. The value that Pokemon games have always had is that they are fun to think and talk about. Up until Legends EA, Pokemon's gameplay was purely a means to the end that was all of the actual value. If you've ever watched people play Pokemon games for an extended period of time, you will always see them get to a point where they are aggressively attempting to not engage with the majority of the game. That said, they all do that to get to the specific aspect that they enjoy. You may see people refuse to start the game until they get a shiny Pokemon, or even entire shiny team. You may see someone that does as little battling, both random encounters and trainer battles alike, as possible. You might see people that speed run through everything else just so they can battle other human players. At the end of the day, all of these people are dealing with the same thing in the same way for the same reason. Pokemon games have never been inherently fun, but they are compelling, and that led people to make their own fun. Being able to directly engage in the world and its lore is why people play Pokemon. Team building is why people play Pokemon. Shiny hunting is why people play Pokemon. Nostalgia is why people play Pokemon. Some people, and I want to stress some people, play Pokemon for the entry-level esport gameplay of player versus player matches in VGC. None of that says people play Pokemon because the act of playing it is actually fun. That has always been my axe to grind as someone that acknowledges the value in all of those things, but is also very aware of and against the fact that none of that is particularly interested in being fun rather than contributing to what ultimately can amount to it. In other words, think of how you can have fun doing mundane tasks with the right group of people, or how you can gamify chores to make them seem fun. The thing isn't fun, the context you place it in is. That said, all of the things I mentioned that people have found fun in are fertile ground for potential fun gameplay mechanics, and Pokemon Legends EA is the first game to ever act on this potential meaningfully. At its core, Pokemon has always been about the collection of all of the creatures that inhabit its world. It has since grown to center that a lot less than the gotta catch 'em all days, but it is still an important aspect of the game. Catching in Pokemon in and of itself is ultimately a means to the end that for most people just amounts to catching the ones they like. Slightly more people catch the ones they think may make a given aspect of the game easier, and even less people try to catch everything, whether that be a gamer-pilled desire to complete all of the things in the video game, getting a shiny charm, or a particularly stubborn vestige of that gotta catch 'em all marketing campaign. In traditional Pokemon games, this process literally just entails scrolling through menus, pressing A, and waiting for RNG to do its thing. In Pokemon Legends EA, and obviously Arceus, they have actually added some level of interactivity in the interactive medium. I know, novel concept for Pokemon games. In these games, you can actually aim the Pokeball In ZA specifically, they built on the traditional aspects of this process by adding an additional risk-reward layer with knocked out Pokemon allowing for one final catch attempt before a Pokemon despawns. So now you can do the traditional lower health, status affliction, best Pokeball for a given scenario on top of positioning your trainer, actually aiming and throwing the Pokeball with the ability to backstrike for increased odds, and the option to risk a failed capture by betting on the fainted capture odds also adds to this experience. Training is the most niche and unfortunately least fun element of the Pokemon value proposition even now, but for the sake of structure, it's the next step in the chain, so let's speed run it right now. Training, at face value, obviously is just leveling up Pokemon, but it also involves the manipulation of stats through EV and IV training. The former could, in a roundabout way, be fun since you can EV train by battling, which we will get to, but the most efficient way to train still just involves spending money on vitamins to more easily fine-tune your Pokemon stats. This, ironically, was something Game Freak tried to make more fun in the initial Kalos journey with Super Training, and it was marginally more entertaining than scrolling through menus, but it ultimately amounted to a WarioWare minigame, which isn't exactly where I would like to see it at the end of the day. But I will say it is definitely more engaging than simply buying vitamins. And finally, the battles, and this is where Legends EA truly shines. Much like catching, battles in traditional Pokemon games usually just amounted to picking the biggest number on the screen, pressing the A button, and watching a cutscene. There's some tic-tac-toe level Yomi involved when you introduce an additional human player, and those mind games can be perceived as fun if you don't experience deeper, more engaging examples of the same elsewhere, but as someone that does, it mostly ends up being little more than a clicker game. Legends EA takes most of the strategic elements for that old system, abilities notwithstanding, which is something I would love to see implemented to a similar battle system in the future, with the added wrinkles of positioning and timing, which is a summary of the new considerations players now need to make that ZA makes necessary. The casting time of moves matters, the hitbox duration matters, the hitbox shape and size matters, the speed and trajectory of a given move matters, the cooldown of each move matters. There are moves that block attacks, moves that allow you to phase through attacks, attacks that close distance, attacks that create distance, attacks that can be cast from a distance, and so much more. All of that is in addition to the original effects for the turn-based counterpart of each move without the antiquated limitation that is PP. All of that recontextualize how stats like speed works. All of that changed the dynamic of what stats are prioritized, where in the original game, speed was over-centralized, whereas now, the stats are truly a means to facilitate a given moveset without it being a coin flip whether the negatives will wall you out of the meta. You can truly use both strategy and skill to make so many more strategies work than could work in the old system. And the best part is, this isn't a battle system with over 2.5 decades of iteration. There's so much to learn, and there's even more potential for growth. That said, this is all well and good in isolation. What makes Pokemon Legends EA truly special though is how it marries all of this to make a phenomenal gameplay loop that no other Pokemon game has come close to achieving. Much like most traditional Pokemon games, the entire experience of Legends EA serves as a funnel to playing competitively, be it in ranked or in private battles with friends, and I wouldn't have it any other way because that was a silver lining of traditional Pokemon's formula. The campaign obviously flows pretty well between completing the main missions and side missions as you see fit, completing wild zones to fill out your roster of Pokemon, and as you traverse the world, there are consistent MacGuffins to help break up the experience in ways that help it feel fresh throughout. Now this aspect has its highs and lows. I loved earning and maxing out the Canary plushies by completing the puzzle platforming sections scattered throughout Lumios, but I absolutely hate the monotony of collecting mega shards. Serendipitously, these two features are a great microcosm of the thesis of this video. Collecting the colorful screws is something I think of fondly because it is fun to figure out and clear the mini challenges that are necessary to earn them. And it's made better by the fact that the purpose of collecting them feels well considered and worth the time and effort as the plushies improve your character in various ways. Conversely, mega shards feel like a Scarlet and Violet TM crafting holdover where mega shards serve as a secondary currency that is collected in a way that doesn't add to the gameplay experience, nor does it feel satisfying to do as the player, like collecting Banandium gems in Donkey Kong Bananza does. It just feels like something they included at the last minute to fill in more things to interact with on the map, which is an understandable goal, but it should be something they achieve by providing tasks and objectives players want to do on some level because it's fun to do, not just because it's a required resource or even a useful resource. Pokemon games have treated fun as an optional bonus at best rather than the bare minimum requirement, and Pokemon fans happily accept it because they have since retroactively decided that Pokemon is a cozy game and therefore doesn't need to be fun to engage with. The Legends EA gameplay loop has finally started to break this trance for a lot of people, especially the ones that realize adding fun gameplay opportunities to a Pokemon game doesn't remove the option to have some cozy things to do on the side, like shiny hunting, which, to be real, is its own can of worms, but I swear I don't need to be making another 20-minute video for this game anytime soon, so I'm gonna refrain from deep diving on that part. Unless this video gets a decent amount of likes and subscribers, but I will warn you, it's not gonna be the next thing. I do wanna move on to Kirby Air Riders next. The heart of Legends EA's gameplay loop is the ZA Royale, and that's because it allows you to engage with almost every improvement made to Pokemon's gameplay in a highly concentrated, centralized portion of the game. These royales greet players with a reinvention of the traditional mechanic where trainers initiate battles by locking eyes, by turning it into an intentional stealth mechanic that inverts the dynamic. Traditionally, many players would avoid playing the game by avoiding the gaze of these trainers, but the revised mechanic allows you to get an advantage in a battle if you avoid meeting eyes with them in an attempt to instead get the jump on them and being rewarded with a free opening move as a result. And not just that, ZA Royales use special tickets to incentivize approaching battles differently by doing things like having a diverse move pool, swapping between your full team to maximize coverage, and in higher ranks, completing these challenges increases in complexity due to things like a Pokemon's footsteps, being able to alert trainers and their Pokemon who will alert their trainer, so that also can be an additional wrinkle to consider and keep things exciting and interesting as you level throughout the experience. And all of this improves further in the end game as it is compounded by being a phenomenal way to complete research tasks, farm money for Pokemon training resources like berries, mints, and vitamins, or even for resources themselves like bottle caps. In addition to all of that, you can earn Apricorn Balls, a godsend for shiny hunters that enjoy color coordinating Pokeballs with the Pokemon they're home to. And the final part of the loop is ranked battles, which can obviously be abused by spamming overused cheese strats, but I contend is best used when you use it as a vehicle to experiment with different team comps and movesets to actually win with Pokemon you care about. I already know my current playtime will be more than double just with building and testing team concepts that I have in my mind. And that's before the Mega Dimension DLC, which I'm already positive will at bare minimum add plenty of single player content to the mix, but also has plenty of potential to add to the competitive team building pipeline. For anyone thinking, yeah, but Pokemon games still need to do better, I already made a video responding to that claim, and you can check it out by clicking or tapping it on your screen now. Thank you to paid members over at shop.watchredirect.com like Trev L. Steinberg for making this video possible. Hit the link in the description to join the credits of every video and in receiving physical or digital perks.